This is the terrifying true story of Hansel and Gretel, the siblings who escaped the witch. The story of Hansel and Gretel is one that many of us are familiar with. In case you've been living under a rock, let me catch you up. Once upon a time, there were two children who lived with their poor parents. The father was a woodcutter, and the mother was a housewife. They had two kids, a boy named Hansel and a girl named Gretel. The family was so poor that at one point the parents had to leave the children in the forest, and they were forced to fend for themselves. Hansel and Gretel were terrified, but eventually, they came across a house made of candy and sweets. And you know what they say? Curiosity killed the cat? And in this case, it almost killed Hansel and Gretel, too, because inside the candy house lived a wicked witch who was absolutely delighted to have two fresh new children to play with. She fed them sweet treats and made them feel right at home. And before long, she even put an offer on the table. She would take care of the children and let them live in the candy house if they would stay there forever. What a deal, right? Well, not exactly. You see, the witch wasn't exactly the nicest lady. She forced the children to sleep in a cupboard, made them work all day, and only gave them the most disgusting food scraps. So after a while, the children hatched a plan, and they managed to escape. Hansel and Gretel ran away from the witch and back into the forest, where they were finally found by a passing knight. He took them off to his kingdom, where they lived happily ever after. The end. Does any part of that story sound familiar? Maybe you've heard something like it before. Well, if you have, then you're not alone. It turns out that the story of Hansel and Gretel is actually based on the terrifying real-life story of two German siblings who managed to escape a witch-est house in the 16th century. Let's meet the real Hansel and Gretel. In 1512, a peasant couple was chopping wood in a German forest. When they came across a small hut, they knocked on the door and were surprised when it was opened by a woman. She invited them inside for some food and drink, and soon enough, the peasant and his son were fast asleep. When they awoke, they were tied up, and the woman revealed her true form as a hideous witch. She tried to do the same thing to the peasant's son, but he managed to escape and flee into the forest. The witch spent the next few days looking for him, but she couldn't find him anywhere. However, the witch did come across another young boy and girl who were gathering firewood, and she told them if they helped her carry her heavy basket, she would give them delicious food and drink. And of course they agreed. Now, these two children were actually brother and sister, and their names were Hansel and Gretel. The witch took them back to her house, gave them food and drink, and made them feel right at home. But then she revealed her true colors. She made the children work all day and gave them the most disgusting food scraps. Then she locked them in a small room at night. After a few days of this, Gretel decided she'd had enough. She told Hansel that they needed to escape or they would be trapped in the witch's house forever. At first, Hansel refused, but Gretel wouldn't give up. She kept begging and pleading with Hansel until he finally agreed to try and escape. Together, the two siblings made a plan. They waited until the witch went to bed, and then they snuck out of the house and into the forest. They ran all night and didn't stop until they reached a river. They jumped into the water and swam to the other side. Then they ran as fast as they could in the opposite direction. They ran and they ran until they heard the witch screaming behind them, "Stop, you dirty animals! Stop or I'll kill you!" Eventually, the witch's screams faded into the distance, and Hansel and Gretel knew they had escaped. They never saw the witch again. As for what happened next, well, that part of the story has been lost to history. But we do know that the story of Hansel and Gretel was written down for the first time in 1812 by the Brothers Grimm. They collected folk tales and stories from all over Germany and then wrote them down so they would be forgotten. The story of Hansel and Gretel is one of the most famous stories they collected. Now, I don't know about you, but I think this story is a lot scarier than the original. There is just something about a real-life story that makes it more creepy than a made-up one. Anyway, thank you for watching.